Brooklyn Independent Television.
Hello and welcome to Brooklyn Elected Officials. I'm District Attorney Charles Hynes. I'm joined today by John Chaney, Executive Director of ComALERT, and Lance Ogiste, Counsel to the District Attorney. I want to thank both you gentlemen for joining me. But first, I'd like to bring to the attention of our viewers the fact that 250,000 people in Brooklyn receive C summonses. Those are summonses for unlawful possession of alcohol if you're under 21, riding a bicycle on a sidewalk, littering, and then they fail to go to court on the day indicated on the summons, and then arrest warrant issues. And it's astounding to me that 250,000 Brooklynites have arrest warrants hanging over their heads. And what that does is put them in fear of driving an automobile, because if they get stopped by a police officer in a routine traffic check, the name comes out of the computer, and they get arrested, and they go into the system for 20 hours. Or they can't get a decent job with a lot of with well-paying job, I should say, because you have to be fingerprinted in order to get that kind of job. So about 2 years ago, Reverend Johnny Ray Youngblood and I started a program we call Project Safe Surrender. And we set up a court part in a church in Brooklyn, where there's a judge, where there is court clerks and court officers, as well as attorneys from the Legal Aid Society. And people who come to court on that day, and this year it's November 9th and November 10th, that's Friday and Saturday, people who come to court have their arrest warrants set aside. So it's this Friday, November 9th, and Saturday, November 10th, between 9 and 3, at the Mount Zion Baptist Church, 365 Ralph Avenue, Brooklyn. If you're one of those folks who got a summons and didn't go to court, you have an arrest warrant pending, come to Mount Zion Baptist Church at 365 Ralph Avenue, and you'll have that warrant set aside. That's Friday, November 9th, and Saturday, November 10th, between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. Thank you. Let's begin with you, Lance, and perhaps you can tell the folks the history of ComALERT. What does ComALERT stand for, by the way?
Good morning, Mr. Hynes. It's a pleasure being here. ComALERT stands for Community and Law Enforcement Resources Together. And what ComALERT does is that it provides services for individuals who are coming back home from upstate prisons. When Pat Gatlin, who was your first assistant DA, first came to you and proposed this program,
that was some 13 years ago.
Yes, back in 1999. And she saw that so many people who were coming back needed assistance so they can successfully reintegrate into the community. And when the program first started, what we would do is that we would bring folks together who had come back, who were living in Brooklyn and coming back from prison, and establish resources for them, have different organizations come and basically offer their services to those individuals so that they can get needed housing assistance, drug treatment, whatever services they need to help them make that transition back to the community successful.
What would you say to the critics who say, well, what's a prosecutor doing working with these ex-felons who are coming home from prison? Why is that the prosecutor's responsibility? Isn't that his or her job to put them away in jail for committing serious crime?
It's a wider view, and I think a much more progressive view about looking at law enforcement's role. It is our job sometimes when people commit crimes to put them in jail, but our job is also to prevent crime from happening in the first place. And a program like ComALERT that gives these services to these individuals and helps them to successfully reintegrate into the community prevents them from going out there because they can't get a job, they can't get housing, or they can't get drug treatment, to go out there and commit new crimes. So we're preventing that from happening.
And what percentage of this group, if they're not given ComALERT services, what percentage, say 10 people, are rearrested with any any period of time, like for example 3 years?
Well, under national, according to national statistics, about 6 out of those 10 within 3 years would get rearrested, and about half that amount would go back to prison. So what ComALERT's been very successful at doing, and it was a study done by Professor Bruce Weston from Harvard University, and his study found with our ComALERT clients that 2 out of 10 were being rearrested. And that's a tremendous decrease in the amount of people who are going out there and committing new crimes that could get them landed in jail.
And so it's really about public safety, isn't it?
It's tremendously about public safety.
And John, what kind of, you're the executive director of ComALERT, and what kind of services do you and your staff offer to the formerly incarcerated?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me, District Attorney Hynes. And right now, ComALERT happens to have a host of services. So right now, we have roughly 20 on-site and off-site services that include substance abuse treatment and counseling. We have that right there on site. We also have on-site GED classes. We have job readiness training, which are a series of rigorous workshops that our men and women who are coming home from prison are engaged, so that they can become ready for possible employment by our employers, within the area. We have health insurance enrollment, HIV testing, and we are very, very proud of a new program that we just put together about a year and a half ago that enhances self-efficacy skills and life skills, and it has a very strong mentoring component. We're extremely happy with the involvement of many of our community residents who've taken the time to actually become trained, to become mentors to our men and women coming home from prison, and we call it the Coming Home Life Skills and Empowerment Project. So these are a few of the programs that we have.
I own a factory in Brooklyn, and I employ about 400 people who help me in our manufacturing plant. And you're bringing me someone who's been convicted of robbery in the first degree and has spent 12 of his last years in prison. How are you going to convince me to hire that person? Well, how can I be assured that I'm not going to have a problem with this guy who's shown a propensity for violence?
Well, as you and Counsel Mr. Ogiste confirmed, at the end of the day, ComALERT is a public safety initiative. And the fact that we are charged with enhancing the quality of life and public safety for everyone, all of our clients are very, very heavily screened, number one. It's not everyone who comes to ComALERT who is, in fact, determined to be job ready. So anybody that we represent to a prospective employer, that prospective employer has the satisfaction of knowing that that individual has been screened by 3 or 4 counselors, that they've gone through a rigorous process of case management, that they are, in fact, drug-free, and that they are, in fact, people who we are representing that can actually be assets to their company.
And how are you assured that they're drug-free or alcohol-free?
Well, our on-site drug abuse, I should say our on-site substance abuse treatment component is run by the Counseling Service for Eastern District of New York. They have random drug testing on a regular basis. They have individual counseling and group counseling, and we also give them random drug screenings, at regular intervals during the job readiness trainings as well. So we can pretty much guarantee that they are drug-free at the time that we represent them.
Could you explain to our viewers why someone who's been in prison for 10 years would need drug rehabilitative services?
Well, for one thing, many people have, give us that question because they do realize that in some circumstances that there is at least an element of substance abuse treatment that's given at the pre-release level. But once they are actually back in the real world, there are many other variables that come into play where we need to make sure that each individual that's coming home, that they are given coping skills and tools to make sure that whatever the skills were that they may have picked up while at the pre-release level, that they are continuing to be drug-free now that they are back home, within society again.
So is it a likelihood that someone who's been a drug addict, despite the fact he or she has been in jail for 10 years, may soon take up the habit again when they're home if they're not given some direction?
It is it's not just likely, but in many cases, it's probable, without the proper tools and the proper structure, for that person to receive immediately upon release, there is a very strong likelihood that upon re-entry into the community, that this person will again involve themselves in the same habit that they had prior to incarceration.
And Lance, let's talk about cost factors. the typical cost of keeping someone in prison has been described as between $40,000 and $60,000.
Correct.
What is the cost per client in the ComALERT program?
Well, it's a lot cheaper than it would be to send someone to upstate prison. It costs us about $2,200, a little bit over $2,200 per client per year to offer all the different services we have. What's so good about ComALERT is that it's a one-stop shop. In our location, we have all these different organizations that come to provide the services for these individuals, and so it's a tremendous cost savings to the taxpayers and the public.
And where does the funding come from?
Well, it comes from basically from the state. Department of Criminal Justice Services has been our main funder, but there have been other grants that we've applied for and other sources of revenue that come to ComALERT to support it. And
this is for both of you, if this program has been so successful, and I'm obviously familiar with the Bruce Weston study, where roughly 2 out of 10 rather than 6 out of 10 are rearrested within 3 years, and we give the services to perhaps a third of the formerly incarcerated coming home to Brooklyn. Can either one of you explain why we're not getting additional funding to expand this?
Well, it's something that we are always banging our heads against the wall about to figure out why we're not getting more funding. But we understand that in this very tight economic times that there's an issue as to where the money should be spent. But we feel that it's worth every dollar that's spent on ComALERT because we're able to reduce the amount of money that has to be spent to incarcerate people, and that's a great thing.
And if it's costing between $40,000 and $60,000 a year to incarcerate someone in an upstate prison, and only $2,200 a year for one of our clients, what's your take on why there aren't legislators and executives who are knocking our door down trying to get us to expand?
I think a huge part of the problem has to do with the fact that the public needs to be better educated in terms of the realities of the long-term views of public safety, and that if they were in fact cognizant of the fact that it's so much cheaper, to rehabilitate as opposed to reincarcerating and providing no services, that there would be a much more receptive view, of any legislation that might come about, or if our elected officials are aware, because of the fact that we have a groundswell of support from the public, that may hopefully change the tone and change the attitudes towards providing funding for initiatives like ComALERT.
And as a prosecutor, Lance, and you've been a prosecutor for how many years?
25 years now.
25 years. And I would assume you tried a lot of cases.
Yes, I have.
Put a lot of bad people in jail.
Absolutely.
Right? And when it was first described to you, this role of the ComALERT program, did you have any kind of reservations, any kind of concern that, maybe this is not the job of the DA, my job is to prosecute bad people and put them away?
The one thing I've learned since you've been the district attorney is that our role is expansive. It's not a traditional role. And I see the benefits of how our role entering into the community has really helped to reduce crime. And any reservations I might have had were quickly dispelled because we knew that, just putting people in jail is not the answer. It hasn't worked. It's never going to work. And so having the opportunity to work with individuals who I might have put in jail at one time to help them stay out of jail is something that's gratifying to me and to many of my colleagues. And we see how it has helped to increase public safety.
And walk me through the kind of services that are given to the folks coming home from prison when they first arrive at ComALERT, and take us through your interaction with them until they graduate to the next level, which is that transitory or transitional employment?
Yes, that's correct, and I'll be happy to. As you know, one of the hallmark components of ComALERT is immediate access and immediate engagement, of our men and women who are involved with our programs. So I'm happy to say that we engaged them actually at the pre-release level first at Queensboro Correctional Facility. And we have a very, very strong relationship with the New York State Division of Parole. So what we do is we make sure that when the person is in fact deemed eligible for the program, that we engage them within the first couple of weeks of their release. And they are engaged in a rather rigorous and rather thorough psychosocial assessment to make sure that they are in fact deemed eligible for the program, which in essence basically means that we want to make sure that this is someone who is in fact coming home to Brooklyn under Brooklyn Parole supervision, and we make sure that the individuals are given pretty much what they need. Now, one of the major components of the program has to do with the acknowledgement that most of the individuals that are coming home do in fact have extensive histories of substance abuse. So what we do is we make sure that they are immediately engaged with a counselor, a substance abuse treatment therapist, and everybody has an individual counselor, and very shortly after they are assigned a counselor, the individual is engaged in an orientation session. And shortly thereafter, they are very much involved in group sessions, individual sessions for that, but immediately they're also assessed for basic fundamental needs like housing. They may, if they have housing issues, if they need health insurance so that they can hurry up and receive proper medical care, all these aspects of transitional needs are covered in the very early stages. Of course, we also look at their educational and vocational background, and we make sure that within the first few weeks, if they are in fact complying with the initial substance abuse treatment aspects of the program, we make sure that the individual is immediately involved in transitional workshops, so they can ready themselves for employment or job training or academic pursuits.
Describe the transitional employment component of ComALERT.
One of our strongest and I dare say probably the oldest collaborative partner that we have with ComALERT is the Doe Fund. And they have the Ready, Willing, and Able program and a relatively new initiative called Pathways to Employment. Since the inception of the linkage with ComALERT back in, I think it was 2001 is when we had the first official partnership. They provide transitional employment to anyone who is ready or and able to engage in a structured environment where they are able to sweep the streets and to involve themselves in transitional employment where they are usually out in the street and they are taking care of sweeping trash and learning how to get up in the morning, learning how to work within a team, learning how to work under supervision. And this, of course, is not employment per se, but it gets them ready for bigger and better things. We also, in more recent times, we have a linkage with some private employers, like Uncommon Goods is one. And
describe that, would you?
Uncommon Goods is a relatively new partner with ComALERT. They are a private employer, and they are engaged in warehousing and in a variety of manual labor types of pursuits. And we have a number of our clients who are, I'm happy to say, happily and currently engaged in seasonal and transitional employment there, where they're able to now get a better understanding of the world of work again and to reacclimate themselves to getting up in the morning and working under supervision and working with a team, and we're very encouraged with that as well.
But isn't that exactly what a program like ComALERT is doing? If you're lowering the rate of recidivism substantially, then you have less crime, less victims of crime, and less all the costs that are incumbent on someone committing a crime and going to jail. Since 2006, we estimate that ComALERT has saved New York State about $11 million. That's an incredible amount of savings, and have reduced crime in the county dramatically.
Well, tell me why. If those statistics are accurate, and I have no doubt that this is researchable data, why in the name of God isn't this program expanded? I mean, how many people come home from Brooklyn? About 3,000?
When the program first started, about 3,500 to 3,500 people every year were coming back from upstate prisons. The number has dropped recently, but not so much that it's an enormous difference. And what ComALERT's been able to do, even though with the reduction in the amount of people coming back, has been able to provide them with the services they need so they're not going to get rearrested, they're not going to create more crime. So I think and I hope that because ComALERT has been basically the flagship for the state, which we now have called countywide reentry task forces, and basically was built on and modeled after what ComALERT was able to do.
And ComALERT remains the only prosecutor-run reentry program, correct?
New York State, the only real one that is able to really reach people and change them.
Why are these infidels not understanding that it's much better for the prosecutor to run the program than be part of a committee? Can you explain that?
I don't know why. I think it's because we were the first ones that were created in the state. And so some of the upstate counties maybe don't have the same resources that we have, but because we were the first one, it really has been able to pull in all the different organizations under the umbrella of the DA's office to oversee it and make it work.
What's the typical cost, annual cost, for 1,000 people coming to ComALERT?
Wow. I don't know what the...
Just a ballpark figure.
Typical cost, meaning...
What's it cost for the program? It's $2,200 a person.
Right, for us
times 1,000 would be
1,000. So I'll leave it to the more mathematically inclined.
Yeah, actually, that would be something like $220-something thousand.
Yeah. And so I take it you would subscribe, both of you, to the conclusion that if we could provide this program for everybody coming home from prison, we at a relatively low cost when you consider the cost of incarceration, that we could lower crime rates to levels that we've not seen since the 40s, right?
Absolutely. It's a no-brainer when you look at the math. The problem, I think, is simply the mindset and simply the fact that it's a very, very hard sell for people who are so used to hearing that the best way to enhance public safety is to build more prisons, and that's a very, very tough nut to crack.
It seems to me that even the most imperceptive people, looking at the three of us, know that you two guys are African American and I'm Caucasian. What about the disproportionate negative impact on people of color that the criminal justice system has, and how does ComALERT act as the counterbalance to that outrage?
Well, I think, from my perspective, if you're able to keep people out of prison, and the majority of all people that are in prison coming back in ComALERT are males, and they have children. If you're able to keep people at home and make them have give them an opportunity to have a productive life, then that's going to have an enormous impact on their family situation, on the children that they have, the wives or girlfriends that they have, and to be able to have a stable environment in which to raise those children. It can have an enormous effect on stopping that revolving door that people talk about for crime and imprisonment and then back to the streets. And so it's really important to have a program like ComALERT.
I think for those who may be watching and saying, well, it's, I hate to say this because it sounds racist, but who's committing the crime? I would suggest that you might take a ride up to Clinton County one time in the summer, of course, not in the winter, and ask to go into the county jail and to see the population. You won't find a person of color in Clinton County. They're all white, and they all have the same economic, education, work ethic barriers that exist anywhere in the system. But what has always troubled me, and it's trouble I know, Lance, you and I have spoken about a number of times, is that in a country that has 12% of its population is African American, that more than 50% are incarcerated. And it seems to me with that reality and the blueprint or diagram for a successful reentry program, wouldn't you think that this program would expand across the country?
You would think so, but as John had mentioned already, it's trying to change people's mindset. It's not, you're not being tough on crime by just throwing people in jail. You have to be, and the term people use nowadays is being smart on crime, and I think that's very important. There are a lot of ways that you can reduce crime without having to put people in jail, but you have to help change people's lives.
And the ultimate goal, is it not, and this is for both you guys, is permanent employment. And so what's the pool? How many permanent employers will hire our clients?
Oh, numerous, John.
Over the past 3.5 years, we've had upwards of 140, private employers who have taken chances with our ComALERT clients, and I'm happy to say that we have never had, in all of those placements, we have not had one employer that has come back to us to say that there have been any negative consequences because of that hiring.
And are you able to use the success of one, or the successful experience of one employer to convince other employers to come on?
Actually, I think the public would be very, very interested to know that we've had a number of success stories. In fact, we've had hundreds of success stories from with ComALERT.
Pick out a couple in the little time we have left.
Okay, actually, one or two come to mind. One gentleman in particular who had been convicted for second-degree robbery. He came to ComALERT. He was quite frustrated because of the fact that he was pounding his against the pavement and could not find any employer that would be willing to take a chance on him. He went out of his way to take our workshops. He polished his skills very, very well in terms of being interviewed, but it took him about 8 or 9 months before he finally was able to get a toehold into the job market as a cleaner of commercial driving trucks. He went to school, got his CDL license, but he could not get a job as a commercial driver, so he got that job just so that he could be in the workforce. Today, he's the supervisor of the fleet, and he's somebody who exemplifies what a person can do. If they utilize our services and they have a mindset that they really want to become somebody who is a community asset.
That's all the time we have. I want to thank my guests, John Chaney, Executive Director of ComALERT, and Lance Ogiste, Counsel to the District Attorney. Thank you both for coming.
You're quite welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching Brooklyn Elected Officials. See you next time.
Watch this and other Brooklyn Independent Television episodes online at bricartsmedia.org/BIT.